stood naked by the roadside with a blanket draped around his hips, feebly reaching out for the glimmering cars as they passed in the morning light. He was almost too hideous to look at. Purple and black tracks streaked across his frail limbs, and his hollow eyes peered out from a pale, gray head shaved bald, eyebrows and all. Brandon Andres Green was not from hell, not exactly. He was from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Over the course of the past 6 days, Green had been tied up in a Tulsa hotel room where his mind was loaded with powerful psychoactives and his body ravaged. He was then driven 500 miles south and abandoned in a Texas field at night. Green had crawled through the darkness, the occasional moan of a distant car his only guide. Every few feet he collapsed from exhaustion. By morning he reached the road. He grasped at fistfuls of air, hoping that someone might notice him. It was at 8:11 a.m. when Patrolman Neil Mora of the Texas City Police Department passed. He wasn't quite sure what he saw. He turned around, pulled over to the shoulder, then stepped out of his patrol car and approached the man cautiously. "Help me, please," Green gasped. The emergency tech showed up and loaded Green gingerly into the ambulance. They ran a few tests on his vitals. He had about 45 minutes left to live. Green was no innocent, not back then. He was making a few $100s a week selling weed and ecstasy in Tulsa when he met the wrong girl, who introduced him to the wrong guy. He couldn't have known that he opened the gate to an underworld populated with federal agents, clandestine chemistry, and mystical orders. A world in which one man, Gordon Todd Skinner, felt at home. It was April of 2003 when Green, 18 at the time, still grinding out his final semester of high school, first laid eyes on Crystal Cole. She was the cute blonde in pigtails at a South Tulsa rave offering ecstasy to Green's friends. Green eyed her baggy pants, her form under a fitted t-shirt. He asked her to meet him down the hall to see if he could buy 50 pills. He was a dealer too, he explained. She patted Green down, probing him with questions. He thought her paranoia was cute. Cole said she'd call him soon to negotiate a deal, and she did around noon the next day. They met at a Burger King near the University of Tulsa. Cole handed Green an envelope, then asked him for his car keys. Green waited inside while Cole searched his car. "Wait 30 minutes before opening the envelope," Cole said. Inside were directions to a nearby Taco Bell while Green found a note addressed to him hidden in the ladies' room. Green saw a tall, bearded man in the parking lot, a guy he noticed at the rave the night before. The notes led Green to a payphone in a sandwich shop, then a call led to the nearby Peace of Mind bookstore where he found a final message hidden in a specific book that instructed him to meet Cole in the parking lot of a health food store. The game took hours, ending with Cole inviting Green into her car. It was time to meet her chemist friend. Green saw the balding, bearded man, the same from the rave and from the Taco Bell parking lot, parked nearby. The man said he knew how to cook all sorts of drugs, and that he'd been involved in serious deals since he was a teenager, that he'd been all over the world, met with insiders, and even served a little time. And now he was looking for some help. Would Green be interested in some real work, a gig that involved a kilo of LSD from Amsterdam? Cole made the introduction. "Brandon, meet Gordon Todd Skinner." Around Skinner, Green felt intoxicated. At the time, Green was a senior at Victory Christian High School, a pretty boy, slight of build with long golden hair and blue eyes. He was naive and easily entertained. The kind of guy who would get fruited into the gills at raves. Skinner was everything Green was not. Big, strong, hyper-intelligent, worldly, and otherworldly. Green needed to get a legitimate job to distract the authorities, they told him. He would need to abandon the party scene for a discreet, seemingly ordinary life. If everything went well, and Green proved himself to be a talented understudy, then they could talk about the transaction in Amsterdam. It could bring in millions. Green was excited and terrified. Skinner and Cole were grooming Green to be a better drug dealer. Just the week before he bought a fake Mazzio's pizza uniform to fool his parents into thinking he had an after-school job. Now 2 accomplished drug traffickers clamored to mentor him. He never heard of Gordon Todd Skinner or Crystal Cole before. "You realize you're in too deep to back out now," Skinner told Green. During his high school years in the early 1980s, Gordon Todd Skinner often showed up to Caskia Hall Preparatory School in his blue blazer, with the school crest proudly emblazoned on his chest. On free dress days, he wore a karate gi or sometimes a tux to school. A classmate of Skinner's recalls seeing him arrive in a 1957 Bentley S1. He wore a full-length camel hair coat. A tall, fleshy math geek, Skinner didn't play sports like football or basketball. Instead, he dominated at chess. "I played him one afternoon and beat him," the class remembered. But as the game drew closer to a conclusion, and Skinner realized he would certainly lose, he began taunting me for not finishing him off quickly enough. He said my finishing game was weak. That's just the type of guy Gordon Todd Skinner was. He always had to be in control of the situation, even when he really wasn't. Chemistry was a breeze. He tinkered with molecular structures. Chess was a long-standing passion, but at the age of 15, Skinner discovered another obsession: drugs and everything related. At 16, he could extract psychedelic tryptamines from plant life. He offered them to friends. All of my high school friends just lined up to take anything that I had, and they were volunteering. So it wasn't a problem, Skinner says, fanning his fingers over the cafeteria table in Joseph Harp Correctional Center in Lexington, Oklahoma, a world and a life away from his Tulsa prep school. His hair, which is left, is mostly gray now, the crown of his head smooth as a Cremini's cap. Skinner's mother, a Tulsa businesswoman named Catherine Margrini, married Gary Lee Margrini. Skinner's stepfather was a special criminal agent with the U.S. Treasury Department, which at the time handled scores of drug investigations. Federal agents visited the Margrini home regularly. From an early age, Skinner learned that he could dabble in the world of drugs right under the government's nose. Either nobody cared or nobody noticed. Skinner tried stronger drugs on his friends, studying them like insects. He was known to bring a tank of nitrous oxide to school so he and his pals could inhale in the bathroom between classes. One weekend, according to a classmate, Skinner experimented on another student, dosing him heavily with something he'd conjured. The teen later found in the front of a full-length mirror. The teen was later found in front of a full-length mirror, naked and talking to his reflection. He tried to negotiate a cocaine deal with an oak tree. I was just a scientist saying, try this out. Unfortunately, they were all just guinea pigs in line, Skinner recalls. Some of them thought it was great, and some of them don't talk to me this day over it. Religion and psychedelics enjoy a marriage over millennia. One of the most evocative myths pertains to Soma, or Chandra, the havoc-creating moon, lord of plants in Vedic Brahmanism. Let Indra drink, O Soma, of thy juice for wisdom, the Rig Veda proclaims. The ethnomycologist R. Gordon Wasson equated Soma with the psychedelic mushroom Amanita muscaria, the same mushroom that appears in the Siberian folklore and ancient Central American pottery. The use of mushrooms, fungi, and other plant-related hallucinogens permeate indigenous spiritual traditions, but it wasn't until 1938 that a Swiss chemist, Albert Hofmann, tried synthesizing ergotamine, an extract of ergot fungi, and wound up with lysergic acid dithalamide, or LSD. Reports quickly spread about its mind-altering effects. Even the U.S. government was curious. Dr. Frank Olson, a biological warfare specialist, stayed at the Hotel Statler in New York City. Unbeknownst to him, the CIA dosed him with enough LSD to seriously impair his mental state. On Saturday, November 28, 1953, Olson's trip ended when he was pushed from, thrown out, or jumped out of the glass window of his room and plummeted 10 floors down. The Frederick News Post said Olson was depressed and complained of ulcers. Today, we know his death was the result of the covert CIA project known as MKUltra, which dosed unwitting men, women, and children with LSD for scientific research. The program was declassified in 2001, but nobody knows how many died as a result of the experimentation. Olson's family settled with the U.S. government for $750,000. The CIA's drug experimentation projects took root post-World War II. Initially, they focused on discovering new techniques for more mind control, torture, and brainwashing. Similar CIA projects grew in scope and ambition during the 1950s and included subjects like future counterculture figures such as Ken Kesey, Robert Hunter, and Ted Kaczynski. In his book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, Tom Wolfe documented the transition of LSD into American mainstream culture. By the late 1960s, LSD was on the tips of myriad tongues, with about 20,000 being introduced to the drug annually. In 1966, a gang of sophisticated, elusive, peacenik drug smugglers called the Brotherhood of Eternal Love became a prolific supplier of LSD stateside into soldiers fighting the Vietnam War. Using a retail front called Mystic Arts World in Laguna Beach, California, the Brotherhood began its crusade to deliver LSD to the masses for the purpose of spiritual enlightenment. Under their auspices, the ingenious chemist Nick Sand produced 3.6 million hits of acid in 1969. His product, Orange Sunshine, was the most popular form of LSD at the time. When core members of the Brotherhood of Eternal Love were busted in August of 1972, Nick Sand was among those whose futures were blotted. Rumor had it that a bright young trust fund kid named Leonard Pickard, also an aspiring chemist, donated to Sand's legal battle. In 1976, Sand was convicted and sentenced to 15 years. He appealed his case on the technicality that he had actually produced a close variant of LSD called ALD-52, which was legal at the time. Sand was released on a $50,000 bail and disappeared into the ether. 2 years later, Pickard, then a student at Stanford, was charged with attempting to manufacture a controlled substance. In the mid to late 1970s, LSD production was interrupted by law enforcement. Availability remained comparably low for the next 30 years. The controlled substance was, it seemed, under control. Cocaine-fueled hustlers discoed across illuminated dance floors, Elvis left the building with 14 different compounds in his body, and Nancy Reagan coached children to just say no. Meanwhile, across the desert, in the middle of the country, a new maestro of the underground drug industry was loosened upon the land. While Skinner lab-ratted his pals at Caskia Hall, at home he was submerged in a federal alphabet soup. Skinner's father, Skinner's stepfather, McGreeny, earned an appointment as a criminal enforcement agent for the Internal Revenue Service, and the front door of the McGreeny house, according to Skinner, revolved with a constant stream of G-men from the FBI, DEA, IRS, and CBP. Many of them were soldiers in the war on drugs, a governmental prohibition campaign that was coined by President Richard Nixon and escalated by President Ronald Reagan. In 1986, Congress passed the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which poured an additional $1.7 billion into funding the war on drugs. They all came to our house and ate at our parties. I grew up with these guys. They talked shop nonstop, says Skinner, calling from prison now. The FBI guys would ask me to look into stuff for them, and I did this on a regular basis. Skinner is serving life plus 90 years for kidnapping-related charges. His cellmates refer to him as Dr. Lecter. He distrusts the FBI more than any other agency, and warns that the line is being monitored and that it might be blocked because that's how they do me here. Skinner's ties to a number of other government agencies deepen in step with his drug experimentation repertoire. He didn't really enjoy marijuana or other common drugs, but gravitated towards entheogens, the sort of drugs that shamans and other spiritualists use. He read most every book he could find on the matter. One of his favorite libraries was Peace of Mind Bookstore in Tulsa. Barry Builder, the owner, became a longtime friend to Skinner. When I met him, Todd was still in high school, Builder said. He would come in and buy all these drug books, and he had a tremendous collection that he bought over a period of years. During his early years of studying, Skinner didn't involve himself in his experiments with psychedelics, preferring to observe their effects on his classmates and friends. Later, he started the journey within. I was a little nervous messing with the neurocomplex of the mind, Skinner once explained it to a courtroom. At around 19, Skinner was ready to step into the fairy ring. He had acquired 10,000 peyote buttons on behalf of a Native American church and extracted a variety of alkaloids from the supply. He decided that he would take the synthesized mescaline. It was profound, Skinner says. That's all I can tell you. I saw colors, and I was in a room that was small, and all of a sudden it was like the set of the Ponderosa. A set on the Ponderosa. Skinner then decided to push the experience further. He fasted for 2 weeks, then consumed 52 peyote buttons. I rolled over and I could just see all the stars and it was amazing, Skinner says, smiling up at the fluorescent lights. I'd had what I'd call the peak experience, and I'd call it religious because you become instantly connected with everything in the universe. That was a turning point for me. I was a scientist prior to that. In the natural camp of entheogens, you've got peyote, psilocybin mushrooms, salvia, and ayahuasca, to name a few. LSD, MDMA, and 2CB are synthetic. Then there is Todd Skinner's catalog, a menagerie of exotic entheogens that require the help of a chemist to decipher. When Skinner took the stand in January of 2003, the judge asked him what drugs he had used. Skinner replied, "I would like to start with the ones I don't use. I've never used, to the best of my knowledge, any form of tobacco plant. I never used methamphetamine, never used cocaine. I have not used street drugs in general. I've avoided most street drugs. I have not used PCP. The reason I'm doing the knots is because I've done so many unusual analogs, the list gets to be long." According to a list he provided to the courts, the number of all the drugs he ingested, inhaled, injected, inserted, snorted, or otherwise introduced to his body comes to 163, and is much higher when counting the derivatives of certain substances. When Skinner elaborated on a particular drug, he conveyed the sort of obsession you'd expect from a vintner. I went through an elaborate process and consumed ibotenic acid, which would have been the active constituent. I rarely did this. I was nervous about the research because of the decarboxylation of ibotenic acid that converts to muscimol, which is an active constituent of fly agaric or Amanita muscaria. Skinner can wax poetic on PCPA receptors and the differences between pharmawascas and 5-fluoroalpha methyltryptamine, but when the judge finally asked Skinner why he wanted to use entheogens, Skinner went flush. I seem to have an idiosyncratic response to entheogens, that they have, maybe that's arrogant, so I've got to be careful. They are very spiritual and sacramental things. I do not use these. I think you put it recreationally, and I take offense to that. Unfortunately, because I do not take these things recreationally, these are sacraments to me. To achieve such a communion, Skinner employed a concoction of psychoactives he called the Eucharist, a communion wafer laced with a panoply of lysergamides ranging from ALD-52 to extract of morning glory seeds, with a sip of ergot wine. Skinner conducted the ceremonies with the sacrament and regularly administered the rite before large congregations of friends. Numerous accounts from Skinner's associates describe seeing Skinner act in a priestly manner, conferring the hallucinogenic host upon eager tongues and offering a chalice to waiting lips. Within half an hour his sheep met God, or the devil. A lot of people, when they met Todd at his highest, they would say something to me like, "Barry, that guy is the Buddha," Builder said. But what I'm suggesting is that Todd had something in his being, this thing that wasn't right. He had made a pact early on in his life, maybe it was even in previous existences, where he said, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be here to create havoc." On the witness stand in 2003, Gordon Todd Skinner was 39 years old and speaking like a priest of Soma. But early in his spiritual journey, Skinner was seduced into another underworld, one of unholy adventures, a world where drugs were both faith and works. As a young man, Skinner partook in the most secretive of all arts. He became a government informant. Skinner's first notable case came in 1983 by way of a money laundering scheme. He initiated the case by helping Agent McLean with the FBI. In a later and more significant operation, Skinner helped HIDTA, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Group No. 2 out of Florida, primarily managed by CBP, set up a complex sting operation with a man named Boris Olart, who was in the Federal Witness Protection Program. In 1989, Olart was then used to extradite and arrest Jose Rafael Abello Silva, a Colombian cocaine smuggler. His arrest contributed to the downfall of the Medellin drug cartel. As he informed, Skinner gathered intelligence on how government agencies dealt with drugs. Work as an informant turned out to be a great training for a person interested in the trade, but it wasn't enough to help Skinner avoid prosecution. Earlier that year, Skinner was arrested and jailed in New Jersey for distribution of marijuana. Skinner's bail was set at $1 million. While serving time, he met fellow inmate William Houck, who was incarcerated for a sex offense. Through the 90s, Houck surfaced intermittently in Skinner's life, usually as a truck driver for Catherine McGready's company, but sometimes as an accessory to Skinner's drug-related transactions. Skinner and Houck were never really friends, perhaps because Skinner suspected Houck of having long-standing ties to government agencies. Skinner's suspicions remained benign, until Houck figured much later in Skinner's life. Todd Skinner wasn't just a psychedelic spiritualist, nor was he merely a government informant. He was business-minded, and he understood the high demand for entheogens. If he could find the right chemist, someone who knew how to set up a sophisticated lab where LSD could be produced, the possibilities and the profits were boundless. Alfred Savinelli, a friend of Skinner's and part of the entheogen community, recalls when Skinner asked him if he knew where he could meet an elusive gifted chemist named Leonard Pickard. Rumor had it Pickard was advancing the field of LSD chemistry. Savinelli knew Pickard. He felt Skinner's ambition and Pickard's naivete would make a disastrous combination. Savinelli shrugged Skinner off. Pickard was still around, just not very visible. After serving time in the 70s for possession and manufacturing, Pickard seemingly vanished from the scene until he was jailed in the late 80s. He did 5 years for manufacturing. Later, word got around that Pickard was in the DEA's pocket. Throughout the 1990s, Pickard continued moving in hallucinogenic circles. While taking classes at UC Berkeley, Pickard attended a series of potlucks, dinner conversations that centered on consciousness studies. He lived in a Zen center, earned a master's degree from Harvard, and studied the migration of LSD use. Late in the decade, his associates claimed to see the professorial Pickard dealing with large amounts of loot. Pickard explained away any secretive behaviors related to his work with the FBI, DEA, and other agencies. The similarities between Pickard and Skinner were extensive. Both were entheogen enthusiasts capable clandestine chemists, lawbreakers, and informants for the government. When they met each other at the 1997 Entheobotany Shamanic Plant Science Conference in San Francisco, it was as though their conversions were ordained by a fungal power. When I met him, Skinner was using exotic structures every week or every few days, Pickard told Rolling Stone. He loved to eat ayahuasca and its various analogs. Pickard says that Skinner was offering research grants at the conference, which piqued his pockets. Basically, I made up the story just quite to Pickard and told him that we could possibly get some money from billionaire Warren Buffett, Skinner later revealed on the witness stand. And I had quite a bit of fun with that one, but it really, in the end, upset him quite a bit. Pickard and Skinner met several times at Skinner's house in Stinson Beach, California. Its former occupant was Jerry Garcia. It was a party pad frequented by insiders of the entheogen world and the perfect place for Pickard and Skinner to talk business. Just a year earlier, Skinner had acquired an Atlas E missile silo at 16795 Say Road in Wamego, Kansas. He lived there and planned to use it as a facility for his mother's industrial manufacturing company, Garden Spring Incorporated. As a home, it provided Skinner with two of the things he valued immensely: seclusion and privacy. The missile silo was the ultimate Skinner box. He renovated the military complex, adding a luxury sound system and a group-sized hot bath. Llamas and Clydesdale horses roamed above ground while pretty girls and hardcore partiers voyaged to chemical wonderlands below. Skinner's silo became a vortex of local gossip, with stories and rumors that continued to percolate about Wamego to this day. Legends of Pickard and Skinner's partnership circulated the globe and remained debated in countless online forums. Rolling Stone magazine presented Pickard's account of the silo in their 2001 article, The Acid King, which portrayed Skinner as a Kurtz-like con man whose ghoulish escapades into experimentation culminate with the fatal overdose of a friend in April of 1999. Skinner's version of events, however, differs from Pickard's. Skinner's recollections. Skinner testified that he and Pickard mapped out a working business and started a clandestine lab at a house in Aspen, Colorado. That location wasn't an ideal chemical processing facility, though. The house was in bad condition, which meant a continual parade of plumbers and carpenters. That, plus high-rent chemical spills, sent Pickard and Skinner packing to Santa Fe, likely in late 98 or early 99. Turned out the move was smart financially. When Judge Richard Roberts of Topeka, Kansas, asked Skinner how much LSD was being made and how often during the Santa Fe LSD operation, Skinner couldn't answer him exactly. He wasn't there often enough during the manufacturing process to know the volume, he said. Skinner says he did manage cash flow from a West Coast figure named Petaluma Al, and estimated that within 1 year's time the Santa Fe operation generated about $30 million in revenue, roughly enough acid to send all of Spain and France tripping. The problem with the successful LSD lab is that it can attract attention. And then all those boxes of tax-free dirty money create paranoia. It's unwise to operate out of the same place for more than 2 years, which is why Pickard, Clyde Apperson, their setup and takedown guy, and Skinner went prospecting in Kansas. They looked at an Atlas F missile silo near Salina, Kansas, a short drive from Skinner's own Atlas E silo. The main difference between the two types of silos is that Atlas F missiles were stored vertically while Atlas E were horizontal. They couldn't use Skinner's silo because the property's paperwork had Skinner's name all over it, making it susceptible to close investigation. By this point, the government was keeping tabs on Skinner at their Wamego base, but the Atlas F silo had certain features that made government intrusion nearly impossible. There were very little above-ground ways of doing observation. A heavy-duty structure to where it would be harder to break into, with lots of space being around and a military fence, Skinner recalled from the stand during Pickard's trial. You would be able to tell if you were under surveillance. Tim Schwartz owned the Atlas F silo. Schwartz was the property dealer who sold Skinner the silo in Wamego. Skinner told Schwartz he was interested in the Atlas F, so Schwartz struck an informal argument with Skinner that allowed him to use the Atlas F base while Schwartz was traveling the country. Skinner claimed that not long after, around December of 1999, he, Pickard, and Apperson began using the Atlas F missile base for their LSD operation. It was the Wamego missile base, however, that began to wave a red flag. With the successful setup of the Atlas F base, the first few months of the new millennium held a promise of unprecedented profits from drug trafficking. That's when a bald and bearded Gordon Todd Skinner first met Crystal Cole at a Topeka gentlemen's club, where she was an 18-year-old pigtailed stripper who performed a country girl gone bad routine. When she saw Skinner enter the club, Cole remembers thinking to herself, "What a sicko, did Amish men really go to strip clubs? Weird." But then they fell into a deep conversation. Soon, Skinner convinced Cole to join him at his missile base. Cole and Skinner were the sort of soulmates who shared the same order of the same genus of the same species. In the dank innards of Skinner's silo, their viscid bodies fused over LSD and ecstasy trips. They experimented with hallucinogenic suppositories. "We knew how deeply we loved each other," Cole reclaims in her exclamation-heavy 2007 book, Lysergic, which she claims has been an option for film production. "No questions, the deepest love ever, sacred love. We worshipped each other as divine interlocking pieces of God." In one cinematic chapter, Cole and Skinner meet up with the suave Pickard and his Russian fiancée, Natasha. The four enjoyed a high-rolling, free-loving weekend in Las Vegas. Within 3 years of starting their romance, Skinner and Cole will participate in a blood-dripping, vomit-spewing incident that will end with kidnapping charges for both of them. Vice magazine's short documentary High on Crystal offers a peek into the life of Skinner's comrade in expanded consciousness. During the video, the cosmic Cole takes the host, Hamilton Morris, on a giggly tour of the Wamego missile base. She explains how the corrugated cylindrical corridors are really fun when you're tripping because they'll start swirling on you. Cole left a detail out of Lysergic's love story, Skinner's other love. Around 1997, he started dating a woman named Emily Reagan. When Skinner met Cole at the strip club, it wasn't a random encounter. He was interviewing her for a job as his personal assistant. Crystal was a great valet, he remembers adding. She was very well organized. At the same time, Cole was finding herself enmeshed with Skinner's soul. Skinner was growing closer to Reagan as well. In September of 2000, Skinner married Reagan. They had a daughter together and divorced the following year. Reagan taught chemistry at the University of Tulsa. Through her current husband, she declined to comment for this story. Skinner says he eventually fell in love with Cole. While Skinner's testimony during the Pickard trial depicted an industrial atmosphere at the silo, Cole had a different take, likening the milieu to that of an theogenic monastery. Cole recalls a lot of nudity and wild parties where people used IVs to blast themselves into deliria. Somewhere in the subterranean haze, Crystal recalled a ritual in which Skinner initiated her into an order using a golden chalice, ergot wine, and ancient Chaldean prayers. In Lysergics, he theorizes that the Last Supper might have been similarly infested. "Doesn't this seem a little like the communion of Christianity?" Cole asks. Depressed and recently divorced, Tim Schwartz, the Atlas F's property owner, committed suicide in March of 2000. Someone was bound to reclaim the silo soon. Schwartz's father finally contacted Skinner in July and asked him immediately to move out any belongings and to remove the locks. Both Apperson and Pickard were away at the time, so Skinner made the only choice he could. He gathered a few trusted friends and moved the entire lab, chemicals and all, out of the Atlas F silo and into his Atlas E residence in Wamego. Fearing Pickard and Apperson's fury, Skinner lied and told them that he had moved the lab to a facility near Topeka. The LSD operation, in Skinner's mind, was untenable. He questioned Pickard's integrity and felt as though the entire effort was polluted by corruption and greed. Worst of all, he suspected that Pickard may have been involved in the murder of an informant. Around August of 2000, he expressed to Crystal, Cole, and others that he was going to inform on Pickard. In a later meeting with Pickard in California, Skinner explained that he was planning to marry Emily Reagan, and would return the lab equipment soon thereafter. The DEA's silo investigation, Operation White Rabbit, began in October 2000. when Skinner decided to approach the government himself as an informant. In the weeks that followed, Skinner took DEA agents into the Wamego silo under the guise of giving a property tour, and he recorded calls he made to Pickard. On November 6, 2000, Clyde Apperson pulled his Ryder truck out of the Wamego missile silo property. Inside was some of the LSD lab equipment they had reclaimed from the Atlas East silo grounds, along with a small amount of precursor. Pickard trailed Apperson into Buick LaSalle. They hadn't made it far before the caravan was pulled over by the Kansas Highway Patrol. Pickard, a marathon runner, took off running into the cold Kansas fields, only to be found by a farmer and arrested a day later. During the ensuing trial, Pickard's worst suspicions were confirmed. Skinner had signed the DEA's confidential source agreement for him. It offered some level of immunity, but not enough to make him feel safe. On October 19th, the Department of Justice struck a deal with Skinner, offering him an incredibly broad umbrella of protection, in a letter that stated, "In exchange for your agreement to cooperate with the undersigned and/or other federal agents, the United States Department of Justice Narcotic and Dangerous Drugs Section agrees that no statement or further information, including documents, given by you during this and subsequent meetings will be used directly or indirectly against you in any criminal case." Skinner was ready to spill, an act commemorated by a 706-page document called the Transcript of the Testimony of Gordon Todd Skinner had before Honorable Richard D. Rogers and a jury of 12 on January 28, 2003. "How is corroboration such as you're doing viewed in that drug community?" the judge asked Skinner. "In certain segments, this is the death penalty," Skinner replied. Skinner's reasoning involved more than just saving himself legally, he claims. It was an indictment of his own character. He was a product of a Catholic private school, a man who was willing to testify against his own partners in an illegal drug enterprise, and an ambitious businessman. He explained it this way: "I was a member of a certain system, the Brotherhood. The whole entire lineage of the sacraments were contaminated fundamentally," he told the court. "This was an absolute violation at the highest level of an organization of a spiritual means. Even though the deeper I looked into this organization, the more corrupt I found it to be. And even the corruption was on myself." When Pickard had a chance to counter Skinner's testimony, his story was a wholesale refutation of Skinner's account. The Santa Fe operation never existed as such, Pickard claimed. Instead, it was a lab established by Skinner to manufacture ayahuasca. He claimed only incidental contact with Skinner until late '99, and after that point, perhaps a dinner each month, until Pickard's arrest in Kansas. Skinner's entire testimony was essentially another part of Skinner's elaborate con games, Pickard thought, one in which Pickard was merely the patsy. Many other individuals have been the victims of Skinner's grifting, unwitting of his actual background, Pickard wrote in a recent email. He has the capacity to weave convincing fictions about others, both real persons and imaginary ones, and extend these confabulations for days in the greatest detail. But a slew of witness testimonies also appeared inconsistent with Pickard's defense. Alfred Salvinelli, who provided some of the lab equipment, said that Pickard made him worry for his own safety and that of his family. Another man, David Halley, claimed that Pickard had paid him $300,000 to lease a house in Santa Fe for a 2-year period. DEA agent Carl Nichols offered a number of phone records and financial transactions that provoked suspicion. On November 25, 2003, Leonard Pickard and Clyde Apperson were found guilty of conspiring to manufacture, distribute, and dispense 10 grams or more of a mixture of a substance containing a detectable amount of LSD. But if not for his arrangement with the government, Gordon Todd Skinner might have stood with them. In a 2004 statement by DEA admin Karen P. Tandy, the DEA dismantled the world's leading LSD manufacturing organization, headed by William Leonard Pickard. This was the single largest seizure of an operable LSD lab in DEA's history. On November 6, 2000, DEA agents seized from an abandoned missile silo located near Wamego, Kansas, approximately 91 pounds of LSD, 215 pounds of lysergic acid, an LSD precursor chemical, 52 pounds of iso-LSD, an LSD manufacturing byproduct, and 42 pounds of ergocristine. Since that operation, reported LSD availability declined by 95% nationwide. But the press release was hyperbolic. The DEA reportedly captured 91 pounds of a substance that contained minute amounts of LSD. Testimony suggested the presence of only an estimated 7 ounces. If Skinner or Pickard produced or stockpiled a larger amount of LSD, it had essentially vanished from the DEA's grasp. Pickard is serving 2 life sentences. Apperson received 30 years. Skinner walked. The entheogen community, which was just gaining ground with legitimate research and studies, fell apart. It was torpedoed, recalls Salvinelli. Everybody dug in deep and disappeared and sought protection. I've stayed away from most of my friends for a decade. Life out of the silo. In early 2003, a chapter of life closed on Gordon Todd Skinner. In the eyes of some, he was an enlightened spiritualist, a demonic criminal, a brilliant businessman, or a gifted liar. The spiritual community that he once prized was obliterated. He had turned on his business partners and ruined an empire. His health began to fail him, and the heat from government agencies surrounded him. I was in a really good mood, Skinner says. I know you'd have a hard time believing that, but I was under enormous stress prior to the trial. When I got off the stand and I was released by the judge, I was one happy dude. I was ready to leave the United States. Skinner's high spirits would not last long. They flew out the door, along with Crystal Cole. Cole first realized she loved Gordon Todd Skinner in Las Vegas, the same place she claimed to party with Pickard. But that was 2000, and now, in 2003, she had a supplemental love. The 18-year-old drug dealer Brandon Green. Cole, the older woman at 21, stood before a mirror in her hotel room. Green watched her practice on I'm Just a Small Town Girl alibi, the same one she'd rehearsed every night of their romantic getaway. She had the alibi down solid. Cole and Green had escaped from Skinner because they feared him. When they first met, Skinner and Green bonded over their love of drugs and travel. They told each other about their favorite trips, the literal ones, including destinations like the Netherlands and Germany. Initially, Green suspected that Cole's relationship with Skinner wasn't anything traditional, and in time it became apparent for him that they weren't exclusive to one another at all. Green cultivated a fondness for Cole and she for him. At first, Skinner acted as if he wasn't affected by the intimacy between the two, but then, by late spring of 2000, Green noticed that Skinner's demeanor changed. He slept less and lost a significant amount of weight. He grew disheveled and unkempt. Skinner was under inevitable stress as the Pickard trial progressed in a Kansas courtroom. His enterprise with Pickard had ground to a halt, and it was more than just a bright dot on the law enforcement radar screen. One night, Skinner showed up at Green's apartment while he was away, took Cole from the living room by force, and then sped away with her. Cole claimed Skinner had threatened to drive off a bridge. Todd has an anger about him that is very scary, recalls Green, who sounds a little nervous. You know when his face turns red, and he's a big guy. He just seems crazy. You don't want to piss him off. It's a quiet afternoon at a restaurant in Norman, Oklahoma, near Green's home. It's been 10 years since the kidnapping, and this is the first time he's ever told his side of the story in its entirety. That incident shocked Green and Cole enough to seek a protective order against Skinner in early June 2003. The order was never served. Cole and Green canceled it when Skinner promised to pay them off in MDMA pills. Hoping to distance themselves from Skinner, Cole and Green then turned to the DEA to inform them of Skinner's drug-related activities. Cole claimed Skinner had an MDMA lab at his mother's company in Tulsa. Green admitted to dealing for Skinner. It felt like Todd was going to kill her eventually, Green says, and whether I loved her or not, my sole responsibility was to keep Crystal safe. Green and Cole escaped to Las Vegas, where they stayed in hotels and devised a plan to leave the country together. It was there, in the dry Nevada Valley, that reality paid a rare visit. She, Crystal, realized that I'm a little boy of 18 and I didn't have any finances, especially when there were no drugs to sell, Green recalls. I wasn't going to be able to take care of her. A few days into the Vegas trip, Cole asked Green to pick up some supplies from the health food store across town. When he returned, she was gone. She left a handwritten note for Green telling him that she had left for California to secure documents so the two of them could flee the country and that he should return to Tulsa to await further contact. Cole then returned to Tulsa, where she resumed her relationship with Skinner, who had plenty of cash and drugs. Cole requested a protective order against Skinner on June 9th, 2003. 2 weeks later, she showed up for an intimate private gathering at Skinner's mother's house. With a small group of friends present, she planted herself next to Skinner and married him. Confused, full of fear, and loathing the prospect of love lost, Green drove out of the Nevada desert and back to Oklahoma. He returned to the apartment he shared with Cole in Tulsa. After a few nights there, he came home and found Gordon Todd Skinner on his couch, uninvited. I couldn't believe it. This was the very man I was hiding from, and he was asleep in my living room, Green says. What surprised Green even more, however, was that Skinner didn't seem upset with him. Skinner thanked Green for taking care of Cole. Skinner said he planned to leave the country with both of them to avoid governmental prosecution, and offered up an idea for the three of them to begin a business venture that involved dredging harbors in the Caribbean. Green, still in love with Cole, felt unsure about the situation but agreed to the plans. Perhaps he thought he and Cole could ditch Skinner upon their arrival there. When he contacted Cole to discuss it with her, she wouldn't return his calls. Finally, Green met up with Skinner and Cole. Skinner handed him a document, a marriage certificate binding Cole and Skinner together. Skinner, Green claims, says that his marriage to Cole was just for legal reasons, and implied that it was fine if Green wanted to resume his relationship with her. I didn't really know what to say and I just left, says Green. And I was just numb. I went back to my roach-infested ghetto apartment and stayed there next to concrete, just up on some bricks, and just sat there. For the next several days, Skinner, Cole, and Green did what drug users do. They continued to hang out and party. Green remembers having sex with Cole while Skinner was showering. He didn't think that Skinner would mind if he slept with his new bride, and Cole certainly didn't object. Room 1411. From charges alleged teen kidnapped, tortured in the Tulsa World. Reported September 12, 2003. 3 people were charged Thursday in a Tulsa County kidnapping in which the victim reportedly was held for 6 days and repeatedly tortured. Gordon Todd Skinner, Crystal Ann Cole Skinner, and William Ernest Houck were charged with the kidnapping of a Broken Arrow teenager during the 4th of July weekend at a DoubleTree hotel downtown, 616 West 7th. Same police alleged that the victim, 18, was held captive in the hotel, where he was tortured with beatings and chemical injections. The teen, broken, bloodied, and dehydrated, was found July 11th in a field in Texas City, Texas. Police picked him up and took him to a hospital. From Skinner vs. State of Oklahoma, June 11th, 2009. Even a careful review of the record in this case leaves unanswered many questions about what exactly happened to 18-year-old Brandon Green beginning over the 4th of July weekend in 2003 at the hands of defendant Gordon Todd Skinner, and with assistance of his co-defendants Crystal Ann Cole Skinner, Cole, and William Ernest Houck. It is even more unclear why it happened. Originally, 3 people were charged in Green's kidnapping: Skinner, Crystal Cole, and Skinner's associate William Houck. A 4th person, Christy Roberts, was never charged criminally, appears intermittently. Initially, they had all come together to celebrate the 4th of July at the DoubleTree, some of them hoping to continue on to the Caribbean. Then, Brandon Green partook in a psychedelic rite, and everything went wrong. Each person's story is collected here, gathered with an assembly of interviews, public records, and private accounts. While no single story is endorsed, some light, however broken, reflects from their assembly. Christy Roberts, everything will be alright. It's not as bad as it looks, Crystal Cole says to Christy Roberts. It's late at night on July 4th, and Roberts pokes her head into room 1411 of the DoubleTree Hotel in downtown Tulsa, Oklahoma. Roberts had just met Cole and Skinner a few weeks ago, and they'd partied hard before, but not like this. Overturned food trays, fast food containers, remnants of half-eaten meals, pillows, towels, and linens are strewn across the room. There's dried vomit caked on the carpet. As she tiptoes toward the bathroom, she's bewildered by the sight that unfolds. Brandon Green, her weed man, lies on the tile, his pants below his knees. Duct tape is strapped around his head and mouth, and his hands are taped behind his back and to his ankles. A KFC drink cup covers his genitals. Green had introduced her to Cole and Skinner, and now this? From behind her, Cole and Skinner explained that Green dropped way too much acid last night. Skinner estimates 15 wafers and was out of control. They had to tie him up. Roberts rummages around the room, finds a steak knife, and cuts Green free. He's not making much sense. Roberts has never seen anyone tripping as hard as he is. She draws a warm bath for him, and she sees Green's scrotum is so swollen that it looks like he only has one testicle. Skinner steps forward and pulls Green out and lifts him onto the bed. Skinner seems more agitated than usual. Roberts strokes Green's hair, telling him that everything will be all right. With Skinner and Cole gone, Green calms down. He asks Roberts the same thing 100 times over. Does Crystal love me? Can you find out if she still loves me? Roberts promises to find out, but when Cole returns to the room, she asks Robert to go with her downstairs to ask the attendant something. When they get back to the room, Green is passed out so deeply that he's drooling on the sheets. Skinner, she says, acts suspicious. Crystal Cole's version of the story: Houck scaring me. Paranoia and fear are all Cole seemed to remember, according to her police statement. Houck and Skinner, she claims, are both reporting to a federal agency, maybe the CIA or the FBI. She overhears them giving out their agent numbers on the telephone. She hears Houck express repeated hopes to kill Green, but he never seems to be able to get authorization. She believes that there would be a team of 9 other secret agents watching the hotel. She's not sure what to believe. What if Houck is a cold-hearted contract killer? Houck's scaring me. I mean, this guy has no emotions, Cole says in court. He, time and time again, said, "This is too much trouble. Let's just kill Brandon and get over with it." Skinner intervenes and insists that they should not kill Green, that he was only having a bad trip. During some point at the Doubletree, she doesn't say when, Cole sees Houck pour a possibly potent drug, Salvadoran C, into Green's mouth. She rushes to Green's side when Houck leaves the room. He sputters out some of the green stuff. A drop lands on Cole's arm, numbing it entirely, she claims. Christy Roberts shows up, and together they put socks and plastic bags in their hands so they can untie and bathe Green without getting the potent chemical on their skin. Green has horrific rashes from the violent scratching. He has blood and tissue under his fingernails. Cole gets some ice and packs it onto Green. The night passes. Parts of Green's body have turned black, near ornamental piercings, the sign of a possible infection. Use antibiotics, she tells Skinner. How can Skinner shave off all the hair from Green's body? Skinner injects Green with vitamins and dextrose. Days later, Skinner examines Green again. He believes that gangrene has set in. They wash Green in a bath of Epsom salts, bleach, and chlorine. The fumes, Cole says, were so horrible that she was ill for 2 days. Brandon Green, I thought we were friends. His side of the story. After July 4th, Green recalls very little, but he does have a very vivid memory of waking up to the bursting pain of Skinner punting him in the groin. "You should have never touched my fiancée," he hears Skinner shouting at him, and then everything goes white. There's a moment of torture that repeatedly shows up in court records, and if it occurred, it would have been before Christy Roberts showed up to bathe Green. Houck claims that he didn't see it, adding that Skinner only told him about it. A phone cord is wound around Green's genitals while he is unconscious. Skinner is allegedly at the other end of the line. He puts a foot down on Green's stomach, then pulls hard on the cord until the cartilage audibly snaps. Later, as Green becomes more lucid and Roberts consoles him on the bed, Skinner walks into the room. Green apologizes to him for sleeping with his wife, Crystal Cole. "I thought we were friends," Green says. Christy Roberts, please pray for me. After caring for Green all night, Roberts eventually fell asleep at the Doubletree. When she wakes up, Green is no longer there, and she believes Cole and Skinner when they tell her that Green left on his own. She helps clean up the room and discover a couple of hypodermic needles in the bathroom and become even more suspicious of Cole and Skinner. Cole and Skinner decide to pack up and relocate to the Adams Mark Hotel a few city blocks away, and Roberts rides with them. From the lobby of the Adams Mark, Robert calls her aunts and asks her to pray because she feels like she's trapped in a bad situation. William Houck's side of the story, if you're Todd. These days, Houck drives a truck from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. most nights, and he recently pulled over at a rest area to answer some questions about these decade-old events. He gives a plain, chronological account of the kidnapping and doesn't exaggerate when speaking. He shares Robert's perception of Crystal Cole, saying she was clear-headed and lucid during the week-long ordeal. When asked if she saw Cole taking care of Green, Houck's answer is flat. "No," he says. She wanted to go shopping. Todd had promised her that they would go shopping. She does go shopping, Houck claims. Much later, after the rooms had been cleaned and Green has been relocated to Houck's room, she hears Cole offer a funny idea. Why don't they shave Green completely bald? Houck watches as Skinner and Cole lather and shave Green's head. She applies eyeliner to one of Green's eyelids. Green is so gorked he doesn't seem to notice. Crystal thought it was hilarious, Houck says. She was shaving off his eyebrows and Todd told me that they had wanted to make him look gay. I was pretty freaked out. I knew that I was in pretty deep, but there was nothing that I could do because at that point I had a fear of Todd. Todd started telling me about how my involvement and everything would link back to my room, and this was the only way out, to do it his way. Skinner offers a plan to use Green's own car to dump him. Texas will find him, and they'll think he had a crazy weekend of partying. On the night of July 8th, William Houck drives the emaciated, drugged, and completely bald Brandon Green to a motel room in Texas City, Texas. Skinner says he and Cole will meet him tomorrow night. The DEA side of the story. He sounds a little spooky. The following day, July 9th, Skinner is fed up with what he feels is a violation of his immunity agreements, marches into the DEA office in Tulsa with his attorney H.I. Aston, and asks why the DEA is conducting an investigation of him. In the next 24 hours, a flurry of emails ensues between DEA agents and government officials. "Can you tell me what this guy Skinner was up to?" asks Tulsa Assistant U.S. Attorney AUSA Alan Litchfield, a former classmate of Skinner, in an email. "He's popped into DEA claiming all types of immunity, etc. Frankly, he sounds a little spooky." "Skinner was involved in an LSD deal," lead AUSA Gregory Ho of Kansas replies. "His attorney got DOJ to give him immunity for his testimony against the other two leads, Pickard and Averson. After his testimony in the LSD trial, Skinner flipped back into the arms of his co-conspirators. This precipitated a bunch of mini-trials during our trial, wherein Skinner, sponsored by Pickard and Averson, testified that 3 DEA agents, a courtroom deputy, and I all conspired to affect his trial testimony. Skinner alleged that, in spite of our best efforts, he testified truthfully. However, it was a tremendous distraction, likely caused OPR, Office of Professional Responsibility, investigations of all concerned, and at the very least was a breach of his immunity agreement. I know 3 DEA agents, a courtroom deputy, and an AUSA that would love to see him imprisoned and the key thrown away. Brandon Green, he just wants me to sleep." When Skinner and Cole arrive at the motel in Texas City on the evening of July 9th, Cole thinks that Green has a number of new needle tracks on his arms. Houck had torn up the bedsheets and tied them around Green's wrists to keep him on the bed. According to Houck, Cole tells him and Skinner to do whatever they want to do, but she's going swimming in the hotel pool. In his confusion, Green continues to think that he and Cole are a couple. He feels ashamed for tripping so hard and apologizes repeatedly within his stupor. Skinner gives Green more injections, Houck says. Skinner then brews a strange herbal concoction. After drinking it, Green feels a swell in his gut like he's about to explode. He vomits into the bathtub. Something wiggles around in the mess. Cole says they look like worm sacs. Houck sees tiny, translucent parasites writhing around at the bottom of the tub. The next morning, July 10th, Houck and Cole search for a location where they can leave Green. If he's left outside, maybe the bug bites will cover all the needle marks. Houck and Cole return and claim they found an ideal spot to leave Green about a quarter of a mile away. Inside the motel room, Green lies semi-conscious with a blindfold over his eyes. Cole tells Green he burned his retinas and that he shouldn't try to open his eyes. Skinner then pretends he's a doctor from Sweden who has come to evaluate Green. Outside of Green's earshot, he explains that he wants Green to have a wholly unbelievable story. The Swedish doctor will make Green a less reliable historian. When evening arrives, Houck loads Green into the car and Cole follows him in Skinner's Porsche. Skinner stays at the hotel and waits. "I remember feeling safe with Houck. I remember feeling at peace," Green said at the car ride to the field. "He put his arm over me and just patted me and said, 'Just stay there,' and I fell back asleep." En route to the field, Houck stops at a convenience store and tells Cole to buy water and food for Green. She returns with 2 bottles of water and some Kit Kat bites. When they reach the open field, Houck drives Green's car off a road about 100 feet from the roadway, and then stops. He sets a blanket down on the ground near the car and then opens the car door to get Green. "William comes by, unbuckles me, grabs me like a baby, and puts me on the grass," Green said. "I remember thinking, William is so nice. He knows how tired I am. He just wants me to sleep." The earth felt really nice. The earth felt really, really nice, and I just fell asleep. Houck set the Kit Kat bites and 2 bottles next to Green, then climbs into the car Cole is driving. The car pulls away, leaving Brandon Green alone under the Texas night sky, little more than flesh for flies. According to Skinner, there hasn't been a fair trial for the Green kidnapping. During the research period for this story, Skinner was able to briefly review a copy of Cole's book, Lysergic, which contains a number of letters that Skinner allegedly sent to Cole during his incarceration. "I went to the DEA and got you out of trouble," Skinner reportedly wrote. "You brought Brandon into my life and I got hurt bad. I asked you, both of you, to leave for good. Do you remember that? Not only did I not lure him back to the hotel, I begged you to get him out of my life. The 2 of you should have stayed away from me." The letter goes on to explain how Cole and Green were sexual in the hotel bed the first night at the Doubletree while Skinner slept next to them. That was wrong, I told both of you. The letter states, today in his drab prison blues, Skinner carries all the intimidation of your average high school science teacher. There is no way anyone could have come out all right, Skinner says. The only way that anyone could have come out decent was if the truth was told, which was that this guy, Green, purely overdosed himself. No one is good or bad. It's not like it's that kind of story. In Skinner's estimation of events, the entire week was more sedate than other witnesses recollected. His young children from an earlier marriage visited the hotel room, he says. Skinner says that the entire Green kidnapping was an elaborate government conspiracy and cites the emails between Ho and Litchfield as evidence. He also contends that he was far too ill during most of the Green incident to be as involved as the others allege. I had been to the hospital numerous times, he says. I was really sick. I just couldn't coagulate blood. Every hotel room I had blood in it. Green saw Skinner's nosebleeds and even admitted to taking Skinner to the hospital 4 times in 4 days, the week prior to the kidnapping. Green believes he saw Skinner kick him and yell at him, yet Skinner denies it. He also says the most incredible things in his testimony, Skinner says. But what was going on with him? He was on a massive dose of psychedelics. Green's trauma must have been self-induced, Skinner thinks. He thinks that Houck was the only one who tied Green up and that he helped Roberts free Green. Houck does admit to tying Green up, but only in Texas, and Houck admits to hitting Green as well. Skinner points to Green's infected penis piercing and his incessant genital scratching as evidence of the self-harm. Moreover, Green was left alone with Houck for long periods, and Houck had served time for a sex-related offense, suggesting that the extensive anal damage could have been done by then. I don't like talking about all this stuff, says Skinner. I don't come from a trashy world, okay? But I'm having to defend myself and everything. This guy, Green, was hell on wheels. For days he was like this. The aftermath. Pain is Brandon Green's constant companion now. It took him months to get out of his wheelchair, a year to begin eating solid foods. Now, 10 years after his kidnapping, his body is riddled with ongoing pain. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most severe, Green ranks his neck a 4 to a 6. His shoulders are a 5 on a good day. He still can't lay on his left side. His hips, pelvis, prostate, and groin hurt so badly it's painful to wear pants. Green doesn't carry a cell phone or wallet because their pressure against his body hurts too much. Bad days are 8s. I honestly don't remember life at all without pain. I cannot remember a day I didn't hurt, says Green, who abstains from the dulling effects of pain medication. Work for Green is a refuge. He and his wife manage a condominium complex together. Someday, Green would like to begin telling his story publicly. After some of his health returned, and the first few years following the kidnapping, Green returned to a number of illegal activities involving drugs and pimping. He has since disavowed those ways. He's now a religious man and believes his Christianity has helped him transcend much of the anger, depression, fear, and confusion that could otherwise plague his mind. But forgiveness for Green doesn't mean forgetting. I think that Todd is pretty pissed that he didn't kill me, says Green. You know, knowing Todd, I bet his biggest regret is that he didn't snap my neck a month prior to the kidnapping. I would love to hug the guy, but I'd be afraid he'd kill me. During the legal proceedings following the kidnapping, the assistant Tulsa district attorney David Robertson told Brandon Green that the charges against Crystal Cole would be changed. Cole, Robertson explained, was simply a wayward small-town girl. He parroted the same alibi that Green recalled Cole practicing in the Las Vegas hotel room. Green felt nauseated. The courts amended Cole's charge to accessory after the fact. She pleaded no contest. On March 26, 2007, she was ordered to pay a restitution of $52,109. According to Green, she paid little more than $4,000 and was released from the order. I could have fought the case and won, Cole wrote in Lysergic, since I was under duress and basically kidnapped also. Bet Brown, the case manager who filed Cole's 2007 finding of fact acceptance of plea, pointed out that Cole stayed with Skinner for years and does not appear to be someone who is afraid of their spouse. Brown believed that Cole participated in Green's kidnapping more than she admitted. Brown recommended incarceration. Cole's sentence was deferred. Her probation for her role in the kidnapping lasted 5 years. She served no time. Crystal Cole is now a self-made entheogen expert, just as Skinner had been, but Cole is much more popular. She's created dozens of videos about responsible drug use. Her YouTube boasts 54,167 subscribers as the time of writing, and at least 10 of her videos have been viewed 250,000 times each. Throughout her videos and her writings, Cole claims she suffers from PTSD. She told the court in 2007 that she had no mental health issues. Cole often presents herself as a survivor, one who's experienced a terrible life event and has moved on to a more spiritual understanding of herself in her relationship to Skinner. But in a 2009 post on her website, Cole claims she's tormented by nightmares when she's reminded of Skinner. Cole also said she had not granted permission to use her name, likeness, book, or life story when we contacted her with several questions for this article. Green, seeking closure and understanding, attempted to contact Crystal Cole several times in recent years, to no avail. She replied to Green's messages soon after hearing from us. She convinced him, for a short while, that she tried to rescue him during the kidnapping. Honestly, I believe you, Green wrote in an email to Cole. Cole then asked Green for his permission to publish their email exchange with her edits on her website. Then Green heard Houck's version of the events. He once again felt betrayed by Cole. How could I be so gullible, he asked. If Green senses that justice has not been served, it's in the matter of Crystal Cole's involvement. Crystal should be in jail, he says. I feel like Todd is on the last end of his crazy life, but Crystal is at the very beginning of it. Crystal has been trained by the very best. I would feel more comfortable with Todd being out of jail than Crystal Cole staying free. I feel like Todd's ceiling is Crystal's floor. That is why I feel like she's more dangerous. I feel like she's been able to consume everything Todd had and then pushed him out of the way and continued going. For his willingness to testify against Skinner, William Houck's charges were amended to accessory after the fact. Houck is a barrel-shaped man with gray hair and a goatee. Since testifying against Skinner, he claims there have been 2 attempts on his life. He found bullet holes in the side of his truck one morning. On another, a gas can was wired to his car. On Sunday, June 16, 2013, Green and Houck were reunited. It was the first time either of them had spoken or seen each other since the trial. Houck was apprehensive at first. Upon arrival, Green hugged Houck without a word. If I were you, he told Green, I would have brought a big gun to this meeting. Green told Houck that he's forgiven him and moved on with his life. For a long time, even after the trial, I couldn't sleep, Houck said. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I was only embarrassed. I was ashamed. Why didn't they actually kill me? Green asked him. Because it would have been better for them to just kill me. At that time, I was involved in it, and that wasn't going to happen, Houck said. I mean, dumping you off in the woods and letting you find your own way out was one thing, but killing you was... I would have picked up the phone at that point. Houck answered all of Green's remaining questions for over 2 hours, filling in gaps and questions that Green carried, many of them having to do with Crystal's behavior during the kidnapping. At the end of the questioning, Green told Houck that he hoped he might find the strength to forgive himself. Even if I were able to forgive myself, Houck replied, I would never have been able to really forgive myself. William Leonard Pickard is appealing his case while serving life imprisonment in Tucson, Arizona. He contends that he was the victim of a con orchestrated by Skinner. In 2005, Crystal Cole filed an affidavit with the U.S. Court of Appeals stating that Skinner owned the Wamigo lab equipment. Skinner was in fact the chemist, and Skinner told her that he planned to set up Pickard as the responsible party in the LSD operation. This is what you do when you get hot, Cole says, she heard Skinner say. You turn the other people in before you get busted. Pickard is now 67 years old. Outside of his legal filings, he primarily reads literature published between the years 1840 and 1920. He actively updates the site freeleonardpickard.org and uses student volunteers to facilitate his email communication. I'll note myself, as the reader of this, that he's been freed since this article was written. During their respective appeals process, Skinner's and Pickard's attorneys have maintained occasional communication. Pickard claims to have met Crystal Cole only on one occasion and hasn't read her book. Cole's actions have done little to help his situation. She is also a deleterious to the case by promoting her various fantasies derived largely from her brief marriage to an unreliable informant, or from her security, or from her scrutiny of documents concerning sophisticated interactions about which she has little experience in interpreting, Pickard wrote from prison. Some feel she frantically is scrambling to some peak of notoriety in the absence of other distinguishing accomplishments. We, as observers, are saddened. The spectacle of Cole commenting on the case is to her profit, eagerly filling a void that has not yet been addressed by the principals, is rather as if Judas's wife was the sole public source of information on the crucifixion. In an odd turn of events, Pickard has recently been calling Brandon Breen, with the explanation that he would simply like to be friends. Green enjoys the calls, he says. Who cares about the DEA hating you, he asks. It's like a badge of honor if those guys hate you, because it means that you must have done something right. From the letters in the back of Lysergic, it appears that Skinner has formed new spiritual understandings while incarcerated. One letter from Skinner states, The Brotherhood of Eternal Love and its ilk were another spiritual con game. These people in the network were there for the money. I used to say gift. Everything to prove your point. LSD network was a high-class drug network, but money, mammon, oriented, not spiritual. But do not teach each one how to be their own priest. Just a power game. Do you think I have gained wealth, fame, or power from this road? I bow and pray each day and remember the true sacrament of life is love. Skinner is technically married to Crystal Cole for legal reasons, he says. He plans to sign the divorce papers soon. He claims he doesn't feel betrayed by Crystal Cole. Not exactly. I mean, it was betrayal, Skinner said. She was involved in a massive conspiracy that went on for years and she admits to it. He's not the kind of guy who has regrets, he says, but he feels, clearly, the pain of imprisonment. He continues to file appeals outlining the various injustices he claims he's suffered at the hands of the DEA and government officials. Should the appeals be unsuccessful, Skinner's earliest hope for parole would be when he's about 80 years old. I've spent 10 years of my life. My life's been threatened. I've been greatly harmed. I've lost everything, and the paper trail is overwhelming of what has been done to me, he says. The trail of what Skinner has done to others is stacked just as high. Both of those trails converge behind the gray walls of Joseph Harp Correctional Center, Skinner's home. Unless a new trail appears, Gordon Todd Skinner remains trapped in the worst trip he has ever taken.